Hi, everyone. I'm Mance Harmon, co-founder of Hedera and chair of the Hedera Council, and welcome to the very first episode of TableTalk. So this is a new program where leaders and special guests from across the Hedera ecosystem come together after each quarterly council meeting to give you some sense of what goes on at the council meetings, give you a behind-the-scenes look at all the decisions that are shaping Hedera's future. While a lot of what goes on at the council meetings is governance, we're going to focus on the non-governance items. I encourage you all to read the meeting minutes at HederaCouncil.org. And the meetings from the most recent council meeting, which was on August 13th, we'll be discussing those today, and they were recently published. Also, we believe it's important to give the community a chance to sort of directly ask the Hedera ecosystem leadership questions, arbitrary questions. And during the final segment of this show, we'll answer as many of those as we can. You can submit questions in advance through our online form. We send that notification out beforehand. I'm here today with Charles Adkins, CEO of the Hedera Foundation, Eric Piscini, CEO of Hashgraph, and Rob Allen, the newly appointed head of the enterprise adoption team at Hashgraph. Before I turn it over to the guests, I want to provide some background on the Hedera Council. When we first conceived, Lehman and I first conceived of the idea for Hedera, our vision was to create a network that people could unequivocally trust. Trust is all important. It's been at the root of the Hedera Council since day one. It was the motivation for the Hedera Council. So how do you know that the network will be safe and that you don't have to worry about collusion among the members of the network? It was really important for us that the members represent the full range of use cases and builders that exist on a global scale. We were told it couldn't be done. We were told that it would be impossible to get big companies to align their interests and work together on a project like Hedera. And here we are, 6 years later, with 31 council members and many more in the pipeline. So for all intents and purposes, we've successfully established this trusted institutional-grade governing body that we had envisioned from the very beginning. But there was another reason that we set up the network governance model. We wanted council members to serve as lighthouse customers, each actively adopting and using the network. Strengthening engagement and supporting council members in bringing their real-world solutions to the network is one of my key priorities as chair of the council for the next 2 years, because driving adoption is essential to ensuring Hedera's long-term sustainability. Okay, with that introduction, I'd like to turn it directly now to Rob Allen to give you an introduction to the Hedera Enterprise Adoption Team, HEAT team, that he's now joined Hashgraph to lead.
Thanks, Mance. And hello, everyone. Different formats today, but I'm delighted to be part of this new initiative. I remember back in February, I think, in Denver, Mance and I had a conversation, because at the time I was or am still the chair of our network utilization committee, and we see lots of use cases. We see lots of great ideas being presented to our committee, and we support those use cases going forward. And then the foundation and the Hashgraph Association help take them forward. But there's been this challenge over many years to get beyond proofs of concept, get beyond pilots. So Mance and I were talking about how we might address that. With my PwC background and my experience in professional services and professional technical services, there was a kind of nucleus of an idea, an embryo of an idea that formed out of that conversation, which has kind of led us to HEAT. So what I'm going to do today over the next few minutes is actually show some of the slides that I presented to that council meeting recently, where we presented how the Hedera Enterprise Adoption Team would actually make a big difference to help every one of those council members achieve what we all want, which is the creation of true value in the network. The thing that we presented to the council in terms of introducing heat kind of set the scene. I mean, in a similar way to how Mance has just described the background to the governing council and the journey to today, was the same thing that the council, many of whom were part of that journey, of course, but some new members, it was kind of new news for, or it's very useful to have to understand the continuity, because many of the community, often say, and quite rightly, why aren't there more governing council members in production? Why aren't they paying for their transactions? Why aren't we seeing more TPS from the governing council members? And there are plenty of reasons for that. Right? We believe, of course, best-in-class technology. The maturity of the Hedera technology stack has accelerated over the last few years, since 2018 when I first met Mance, 2017 when I was first introduced to the Hedera project. It's almost unrecognizable today from what it was there. We're getting block streams, we're getting block nodes, we've got the Hedera token service, we've got products and capability being built on top of the network. So the technology itself isn't the problem. We've got ecosystem partner support now. We've got this very rich, very experienced group of direct ecosystem partners that the governing council work with. So Hashgraph and the foundation and THA are all kind of in specific roles, but there's never really been any coordination function over the top of them, because the regulatory posture of Hedera is to be super risk averse because of the lack of clarity. So we've never collaborated, we've never coordinated, and I think that's been a barrier to governing council adoption too. And clearly, we do have too few solutions. There are many. There have been a handful of lighthouse use cases. Everyone points to Atma and the product cloud and the proofs of concept that they were running in order to demonstrate high transactional throughput. We've had Toko over the years. We've got Archax and Aberdeen, the council member, kind of providing real-world asset tokens and being very vocal on behalf of the council about it. So that we do have some bright spots, but we want to join all those bright spots up. And that's why the Hedera Enterprise Adoption Team was formed. What HEAT intends to do, and we are actively now mobilizing in order to do this very quickly, is to provide two or actually three core new features for the council. HEAT is initially focused entirely on council member adoption. So council member production solutions that add value not only to Hedera and the Hedera network, but also to them themselves. For an enterprise to be in production, we have to jump through many, many hoops within an enterprise. And it's not just the technology. The path to production includes getting product sign-off, getting strategic alignment, having chief risk officers and general counsels and executive leadership teams all signing off on this significant investment and change. So even though we have the technology, we need to be able to navigate that as well. HEAT will work with the foundation to drive enterprise-level account management. One of the things that we've done before, but we haven't really gone all in on this. So every council member will have a single point of contact, will have a direct line to the foundation in order to provide all the support they need in terms of not only ideation around use cases, but anything, right? So the council the council representatives feel very, very well supported. This is fairly standard in any kind of technology platform, and this is what we have done and what we will now kind of take up to the next level. What those account managers then do is to work with the HEAT team, and the HEAT team will be drawn from across all of the organizations. I'm not building an empire. I'm not kind of creating a supersized team. We've got the skills, we've got the expertise, we've got the experience, but it's scattered across the various organizations. So I'll be able to then request resources to form consulting teams that support council members in their region, within their sector, with a close support to take these ideas into kind of qualified projects. We'll be using AI to drive rapid prototyping. We'll be applying all of the knowledge and expertise we have in this very focused way. And we'll be working very closely with the council members so that, not just the technology problems are being solved, but also their internal navigation through those hurdles and hoops that I was referring to earlier. We'll do that through executive engagement. We'll do that through, some of our representatives aren't on their leadership teams, so we can, provide top cover and support. We can provide ways to access and educate their own executive teams on, why are they advocating and sponsoring Hedera-based solutions. And then we'll work with our growing list of partners within the ecosystem that are very experienced in delivering solutions. We've got a long list now of systems integration partners and other development partners with whom we will work to hand off those prototypes. And then finally, we plug into council member kind of governance through the Network Utilization Committee. We currently already take project updates from the various partners. These will all be kind of now channeled through HEAT and operationalized and normalized so that the council get to see what's happening, and we create a FOMO for the next council member to join the HEAT program. So what does success look like for HEAT? Well, I've kind of only have one KPI, and that's council member projects in production, creating value for both the Hedera network and for themselves. But that could be broken down into additional products. The lessons that are being learned through this process will feed back in, be shared within the council, will be refined and built upon. And so those products will be useful to other council members. And we're going to start with some of the studio product suites that we already have. So production hardening of those, adding to them, adding the open source code back into the repositories so that the wider community can use and benefit from those lessons. We're going to be generating meaningful metrics, of course. So not just TPS and TVL, but through UseCon, we'll be identifying new metrics that can properly track the progress and the success of these this program of work, these HEAT-based projects. And then the Lighthouse projects that Mance said was one of those 3 key goals of setting up the governing council member materialize out of HEAT, because we won't hide them in stealth or under bushels. We'll be able to talk openly about the experience, and the other council members and enterprises more widely will have reference stacks and credentials to identify why Hedera are excel in a particular use case. And then the Hyro project will also benefit. We'll be identifying parts of these projects or entire parts of these projects that will contribute back into the Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust Hyro project for the benefit of all. And as I said, most of all, we want to generate revenue. That's really the sustainability of the network and revenue driving co-funded projects by council members, not grant funded, but co-funded, co-invested projects for the long term, where revenue is part of network revenue is part of the business case for the council members project itself. That's where we want to go to. And I think we are in an excellent position to achieve this within the next 2 years and Mance's term as chair.
All right. Well, thanks, Rob. I know we're going to be talking about heat more, and there's, as progress is made, we'll be reporting that out to the community. We'll be talking about the various use cases that are being developed in go-to-market. Now let's move on to the questions from the community. So the community submitted roughly 90 questions. Of course, we don't have time to answer 90 questions. So what we have done is we've taken those questions. Many of the questions are very similar, and so we categorized the questions. We're going to start with those, and everyone that's on the panel here is going to contribute and try to address what your interests are as a community. So let's start with the very first one, council member involvement. That's the category. The question is, how is Hedera Council ensuring that its member organizations actively build, promote, and launch meaningful use cases on the Hedera network, driving real adoption, aligning their incentives with Hedera's success, and visibly championing the network to their audiences? So, of course, you've just heard all about heat. I'm just going to say a word about it, and then I'm going to ask Charles and Eric to comment as well. What really excites me about heat is that it's the first time that we've had the broader ecosystem of organizations working together in a real coordinated fashion to specifically address member needs. Over time, we decentralized Hedera. Originally, it was a centralized team by definition, and over time, we created the foundation, the Hedera Foundation. We created Hashgraph. We created the Hashgraph Association, run by Kamal Yousefi, who is not able to join us here, but supports this as well, and others. And the various organizations have been pursuing their mandates. They've been pursuing the mission that they were given. And now we're working together in a coordinated fashion, that being coordinated through Rob's leadership, to sort of marshal those resources from across the ecosystem to make this work for the council members. So that's new. That's exciting. It's going to require a sustained effort. This is not something that you do in 12 months. It's not something you do in 18 months or even 24 months. You can make a lot of progress in 24 months, and you'll see that progress as it unfolds. But this is going to require a long-term sustained effort, which means that the leadership of the various organizations need to be on board, and they need to be supportive of this sustained effort. So with that, I think it's a great segue here to just sort of turn over to Eric. Perhaps you can speak first, and then Charles can comment as well.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Max. I think I'm super excited because when you think about what was really missing in our entire ecosystem was the adoption by the council members and focusing on them and exposing them to a benefit, right? I love that idea of saying this is a benefit to them. This is not something we ask them to do. This is a benefit that they get when they join the council. I think that's a really good messaging, and it's going to make us very successful.
Okay, cool. Charles, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is really exciting. As a lot of you know, last year in 2024, I was the president of the council. So I have a deep understanding of the challenges a lot of council members were actually facing when it comes to building some kind of a production use case inside of their organization. And a lot of times we tend to forget that even though we see these large organizations with the logos out on the website, really our members are people. They're just people that work within these organizations. So they would come to the network utilization committee and, UseCom, which Rob is a chair of and has, run and championed over the years. Everybody gets really excited, and then they go back to their organization and they're not quite sure how to actually pitch Hedera to their company internally. So what gets me so excited is this is the first time that we're all going to collaborate and say, look, let's make these actual members a hero within their organization. Let's plan what a POC through production use case looks like, put together that documentation, what a support roadmap looks like, and one of the other challenges was they never had a single point of contact to say, who do I go to for, this particular issue? Well, now they're going to have Rob, and we'll see how long Rob enjoys this, or maybe won't enjoy it for, but Rob is going to get a lot of phone calls. I can tell you because of just being at the council. And that's a good thing because it shows there's a lot of excitement from council members that actually want to build things. They just need that one person and that one team to go to who can map it out for them and have their back when they actually go try to support this internally. And this is going to be the first time that we've done this in a real collaborative, professionalized way. So that's what I'm most excited about is we're all together making sure these council members build something.
I get lots of calls anyway, but now I'm able to operationalize it, and I'll have more time to deal with it. Again, along with the account managers within the foundation. So it's I'm delighted that this has all kind of come together. It's come together at the right time. I'm very excited about exactly where we are and the next 2 years and what we can achieve.
Okay, great. Well, we're glad to have you with us, Rob. Looking forward to the work that's ahead of us, and we'll be talking to the community about that as it continues to grow and mature. All right, next question. What is Hedera's current relationship with Google, specifically regarding Google's Cloud Universal Ledger and Agent Payments Protocol? And how does the council view Google's decision to pursue its own Layer 1 technology rather than building directly on Hedera? Charles, thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's actually exciting to me. And I mean, this is something that I think a little bit of history on how this actually rolled out would be really good for people to understand is that this is a very narrow scope for financial institutions. And the reason it came about was specifically because financial institutions were looking around in the marketplace and they see things like Circle, they see things like Stripe, who, have internal blockchain products. However, they also have competing products to banks. And so when a bank is saying, look, I need something that's reasonably neutral, a product that I'm familiar with and that I already know about, they actually were the ones that asked Google to set up this permission to blockchain. It is private, it is permissioned, it's not publicly auditable. However, the reason that is exciting is because that, number one, validates the market that we work in. If Google's going to put forward the effort to put out a product in an industry that we also work in, that's a really good sign. It also provides the opportunity for us to anchor or have attestations of a lot of their proofs and a lot of the things that they actually do. So the fact that Google is really one of our first council members, has been here for 5 years, is really going to give us kind of a head start on understanding how to utilize that private public blockchain connection. And I know Lehman and Mance and everyone at, Eric and at Hashgraph are working on things to make this, really a great future in working with Google. So I think it's a great thing. It validates the market, and I think we're going to have even a deeper relationship with them.
Yeah, agreed. Eric, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think the first reaction could be you have a competitor in the council, right? That might be the first reaction that people have. I think the way I look at it is we need to make sure that the entire industry grows, and when people in the council are building blockchain solutions, whether with us or on the side of us, is actual validation. And we have example where IBM is on the council. IBM has been building many different blockchain solutions over the years, and we've been working with them. I think to me, that's a validation of the market, which is what Charles said, but it's also an opportunity to collaborate and bring additional technology solutions together to market. So I would not be surprised in a few years from now, we're going to be going to market with Google and their solution together because there is a specific need for specific organizations to do that.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And I think that, so there's no stipulation for any council member to be exclusive to Hedera. I feel we've always felt that our technology will shine through and for the right use cases will be adopted by the council members. That said, we've got Chainlink, we've got BitGo. They're clearly not exclusive, but have been attracted to joining the council. And then more widely, we're getting a rash of new technology businesses driving their own layer ones, right? So we got, we talk about Google, but Stripe and Circle have both got, the Arc and Tempo, or the other way around, Tempo and Arc, respectively. This is kind of just a natural part of the cycle, I think, where technology businesses want to own as much value in the full stack as they possibly can. And then they'll realize at some point on that journey that actually it's not, theirs to own, and there'll be consolidation, or there'll be a kind of a normalization across the network. Hedera is the trust layer underneath all of that. Every one of these networks, and in 2015, we were talking about, private blockchains, and Eric mentioned Hyperledger, so Hyperledger Fabric or IBM blockchain. These walled gardens didn't really survive because they didn't have the right return on investment. I suspect the same will be the case here, except that we are now 10 years on. We've got interoperability solutions. We've got more sophisticated bridging. And I think everyone now recognizes that there won't be one chain to rule them all. So, where Hedera sits is actually perfectly placed for support to this variety of networks. So I think it's a good thing. It shows the maturity of the ecosystem as a whole.
Yeah, so I would agree with all those comments and just reiterate, Google is not creating a token for Google. There's no Google token, right? Like there is HBAR. Google is focused on private network use cases. They have intentionally designed their solution to have really high throughput with perhaps at the expense of some decentralization. It's technically possible to run multiple nodes, quote, quote, on the same machine, on the same piece of hardware, if the customer wants to do that. Google has recognized, as we have, that many customers are going to start with private networks. Some customers are going to start with a single machine with one node running on that machine. Call it a database, right? Some customers are going to start right there and their journey to eventually using public networks. But it's also the case that Google's customers that use that technology are private networks, many of which that are going to have tokens running in this private network that don't want to be bound up into a walled garden, as Rob had mentioned, right? They're going to want to move those tokens to public networks. And our relationship with Google makes it natural for for us to work together to make it possible for those organizations to do exactly that. I view it only in the same way that the rest of the team here views it. It's a good thing. It's reflecting the maturity of the market, and it will result in traffic flowing on the Hedera network ultimately. So I think it's natural, it's to be expected, and it's going to benefit us. Okay, next question. What is the vision and economic model for HashSphere, specifically regarding their use of HBAR, potential governance structures, and involvement with Hedera, and how will they function within the broader ecosystem? Eric, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I like that question because we asked ourselves that question when we started the journey on HashSphere, right? And I want to go back in time. About a year ago, we looked at the market, and the market was very clear. The market was telling us, we love your technology, we love your team, we love the concept of the cancer, we love a lot of things about Hedera, but we have limitations ourselves. And those limitations are data residency, regulatory frameworks, and many other things in privacy. And they said, for that reason, we cannot build on Hedera because you are a public ledger. And we were losing them, and they were going away, right? And I was very frustrated, right? I've been in this business for 10 years. I don't want to lose clients. And we said, what if we build a gateway for them to start engaging with what they love, which is the technology, and then bring them into a private setting, a private network, so that they can start consuming the technology. They can start their journey with us. And then at some point, we might convince them to go public, or we will bridge our private version to mainnet and benefit mainnet at that time. And that's why we started HashSphere. It was a very clear demand from the market, right? People asked for HashSphere. And by the way, council members, as part of HIT, are asking already for HashSphere for themselves, right? So we got validation, we got product market fit from the very beginning. So that's very important. The second piece is it gives them, the clients of HashSphere, the ability to create their own economics within the sphere, their own governing structure, right? So they can experiment with all the things we already have within the sphere and use that technology and use that governing structure, which is great. Because when at some point they connect with mainnet, then it's going to be very familiar. And then the last point, which is a question we always get, right? How do you benefit Hedera mainnet? How do you benefit HBAR by creating HashSphere? And many different ways, right? When I go to market and I explain to people we are building HashSpheres, developers love it because they know that now we're going to have more clients to serve. Ecosystem players love it, right? The bridges, the oracles, they love the fact that we have both a private and a public ledger because that gives them more channels of distribution, right? So they continue to build and they are actually supporting mainnet even more. And then obviously the last one is when we connect an HashSphere and mainnet, when we do that with bridges and other technologies, we will benefit mainnet by using transactions on mainnet, thus generating revenue for the network. So there's a lot of different benefits of having HashSphere. The main one is making sure we serve the market, and the second one, not in that order, is to benefit mainnet in the long run. So that's why we did it. That's why we get more demand for HashSphere that we can support, because we have a lot of demand today for organization, small, medium, and large, to use our technology, the technology that was invented by Mance and Harmon.
Yeah, I would just add to that this is not something that is a new idea. This is actually where we started. Lehman and I, when we created Swirlds back in 2015, we first worked on private network use cases for 2 years before we decided to create Hedera. And spheres make it possible to use the Hashgraph, the same Hashgraph technology that the world is using in Hedera, in a private context. And by the way, because it's the same code base, it's going to be tightly integrated with Hedera and with other spheres. As the universe of spheres grows, the value to every new sphere gets larger as well. And we'll be able to leverage that. That will end up shaping the industry. The vision, of course, is ultimately for all layer ones, layer twos, private networks to be able to talk to each other in a very tight, very secure, low cost, highly performant way that we'll be able to do first in spheres with Hedera. So more to come on that, but this is just a continuation of the original vision. We're going to realize that now sooner than we had potentially thought we would, and it's because the market is moving in that direction.
Can I just provide a kind of real world example of that? So Australian Payments Plus, when it proposed a range of projects to the Reserve Bank of Australia under Project Acacia, we saw the opportunity, because the Reserve Bank was looking for projects to issue central bank digital currencies into this range of projects. We saw the opportunity to do that, and but the stipulation by the Reserve Bank was that it had to be in a private network. We had anticipated building our projects on the mainnet, the public network, which is where stable coins exist, where the liquidity flows, where the users will be. So we thought long and hard about how we might incorporate CBDCs that were also participating in these mainnet projects from within a private network. And we came up with the idea that we would want some of the stable coins within the interchange project. So we have a technology that swaps one coin for another. That's the interchange project. There's a settlement asset within that we thought would be useful to be backed by zero risk central bank money issued as a token. So how does one then synchronize across two different networks, one public and one private? And we've designed with the Hashgraph team some kind of unique technology that utilizes Hedera and the Hedera consensus service in order to not transfer value, but synchronize across networks without losing value on either one. And it's a great example, I would say that, wouldn't I? But it is a great example of how these hybrid solutions based on very specific requirements from stakeholders can be built and can utilize both private and public. We could, if without HashSphere, we wouldn't have been able to accommodate that requirement, and therefore we would have had to have a different solution, probably less secure, in terms of the backing of that settlement asset. And but that was not the case. We had the HashSphere available to us. We had the Hashgraph team to support us, and the foundation support us in terms of the stablecoin studio and the issuing of stablecoins by partners. So all of this came together really, really neatly. And kudos to Eric and the team for being able to provide it.
I mean, I'll just chime in and give you guys my really simple analogy, because I'm a pretty simple person. Is we're all pretty aware, at least most of us, with the way that we have Wi-Fi in our house, or we have internet in our house. It's our own network. And, I have a printer right here. I permissioned this printer to be on my network. However, and I can see other visible networks that are close to me. I don't really necessarily know what's going on them. However, I can use, my ISP, my internet service provider. I can go on a protocol, a TCP IP, HTTP, basically sending information across a public protocol. But yet I have my own private network in my house that works with my Wi-Fi, and I can permission or, unpermission things out of the network and do kind of the things I want to do on that network without anybody really seeing what's going on. Now, however, if you go to the internet service provider, what they can tell you is they can tell you how many, potential devices I have permission on my network. They can tell you, how many hours I've been, on a particular device, those kind of things, which are not really valuable data to most people. So this is, if you notice when you go to the airport and you get on the free public Wi-Fi, you particularly don't want to do banking transactions. This is kind of the, and that's kind of the reason. It's public networks have a great use case, especially when, you're transferring information from, in this case, I would say from sphere to sphere. They're going to have to cross a public protocol, and that's going to create a transaction. When I'm in my own home network, I don't care if my neighbors know that I'm online or that I'm sending quote unquote information, but I don't want them to have all the details of, me doing my online banking. And that's where spheres come into play. You keep the metadata and all of the actual data of what you're doing in your permission network to yourself. And you decide who gets to see that and who doesn't get to see that. And then when you want to start moving that information around, transferring it, proving out how many payments you've made on a home loan, you can send them across a mainnet protocol, which would be, the Hedera mainnet. And that's going to create a lot of transactions. There's not a lot of internet service providers that run a public network that are hurting for money right now.
Cool. Well, thank you, guys. Let's move on to the next question here. How is Hedera Council fostering enterprise-wide adoption, prioritizing key industries and initiatives, and positioning Hedera for growth amid evolving regulations and upcoming milestones? Who would like to take this one first?
I mean, I can jump in on this one. I think, one of the things that has been holding people back, and Rob alluded to this earlier, is that many of the enterprises, and that's kind of the impetus of starting Heat, was under this regulatory regime, at least in the United States, our council members have become a lot more comfortable with having these conversations where previously they may not have. So the regulation has been helping quite a bit. I know we've discussed previously as well, just keeping teams within enterprises kind of focused on how they can utilize the Hashgraph technology in their organization has sometimes been a little bit of a challenge because of the shiny object syndrome that, all of us end up getting. We see, chat GPT moments happen and these new AI tools come out. And, for a short moment in time, we get diverted towards those as enterprises. And then you realize quickly, wow, AI actually works better when I have Hashgraph running behind it, verifying how I built this data source. So all roads tend to come back even when some of these enterprises diverge. But with the focus, with the Heat team, I think it's really going to solve a lot of the problems. A lot of the challenges we had earlier was we didn't focus with a collaborative team and full ecosystem effort on getting them to build. And now we are. And I think that's going to be a huge change. And hopefully it spills, way outside of just council members into, further enterprises as well. I anticipate, and I know how Rob works with enterprises, this isn't just going to stay with the council members. Once he's got every single one of them on a production use case, he's going to move on to other enterprises, and we're probably going to build this out across as many companies as possible.
Well, that as well as their second, third, and fourth use cases, right? So we won't stop with just one. I think the other thing, all of that, of course, is true, and kind of I've alluded to most of this, but we tend not to talk as much, I think, as we should about Hyro and the benefits of Hedera donating its entire code stack into the Linux Foundation's decentralized trust and being the first and only layer one to have done that so far. That's massive because it attracts developers that are familiar with Linux, open source protocols. It moves far beyond the Web3 developer community into the millions, tens of millions of Web2 developers, and attracts them with tools and capability in open source in a way that is very familiar to them. So I was talking earlier about the top-down approach, executive engagement, council member representative support, and relationship management. But there's an equal and opposite, equal and additive force rather, from the ground up. The grassroots developers, where resources are really critical for enterprise. They need to know that they can actually deliver and support these applications, and a lot of their technology selection choices are made based on the availability of either partners or direct resourcing into to using those technologies. So Hyro is really, really critical part of this this solution as well. And of course, we're excellently placed for that as well by design. And there's a lot of effort put in last year by the council and the board to achieve that goal, and we're right there front and center.
Yeah, maybe I can add additional topics. So one is what we've been doing for the last 2 years now is building an abstraction layer on the top of Hedera, right? With a studio. So think about Guardian and sustainability. That's a studio. We have an AI studio. We have a tokenization studio, stablecoin studio. Those studios are actually a way to consume the Hedera network in a much easier way than to try to consume the network directly by connecting to the network. And by doing that, we are accelerating the adoption. By doing that, we are saying, enterprise, if you need something in AI, stablecoin, tokenization, or sustainability, start there. Start on that layer, and you're going to be able to do something much faster than that you were being able to do before. So I think we see a lift for the entire industry because of the regulatory changes, but we have a unique situation ourselves with Hyro, with the studios, with the council adoption that are going to move us even faster than the rest of the industry. And that's why I'm really excited, because we are doing something way more than the rest of the industry is doing.
Thanks, guys, for joining me here today.
Thank you, Mance. Thanks, Charles.
So thank you, everyone, for joining us for the first episode of TableTalk. So stay tuned for the next one after the November council meeting. Always, you can visit HederaCouncil.org for the latest meeting minutes. And we look forward to speaking with you again in the coming months.